This is Death or Prison, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. We bring you stories of hope and encouragement.
Welcome. This is the Death or Prison podcast, brought to you by Lean On Me USA. To my right is Oswald Newbold.
Thank you for having me here.
To my left is the world famous Johnnie Superstar Jeter.
Thank you. Thank you for
Today, we're going to have a nice, cool fireside chat with Mr. Jeter about his life. Johnnie, you served 5 commitments, totaling up to 17 years in prison.
Correct.
Wow, that's a lot of time.
It is, sir.
Yes.
Can you walk us through how this all began?
So, being raised in a broken home, my mother tried real hard to teach me and my brother the right from wrong, and she did well, even though she came from a background of abuse and mistreatment, being adopted in Germany and brought to the States. My father, my biological father, was a abusive alcoholic, and his father was an abusive alcoholic. So, as a child, my parents split up early, and so all those years, young years, I was always wondering why my dad didn't want us. Why was he not around to take care of me and my little brother, and to take us fishing and teach us stuff? So really and truly, the stepdads would come and go, and that kind of just pushed me further out in the streets. You know, it pushed me further away from home instead of in it.
I noticed you said you and your little brother, your older brother, or younger brother?
My younger brother.
Your younger brother. Did you have any uncles or any other role models that were in your life at that time?
Yeah, so my uncles, they used drugs and drank. So most of the people around me in my environment as a childhood were using and drinking and smoking cigarettes and stuff like that. The people that were my role models at a younger age were people that were outside of my family. You know, they were neighbors' dads or neighbors' friends, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. The first thing you brought up is nobody took me fishing.
Yeah, so something happens, you know, because I have experiences now where people, you know, talk about going fishing and stuff like that. And I thought to myself, my dad never taught me to fish or hunt. He never taught me how to throw a football. He never taught me how to treat a lady. Wow.
I look at life in general, and I know that we're building upon some of your experiences. Mm. So you believe now that you know, coming up, that these experiences, they begin to shape the man that you become now?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, sir, definitely. Those things that I went through at a young age when I was, you know, younger and trying to be involved in stuff and not being accepted by the stepfathers and not really wanting to accept them, right? Mm-hmm. So going out and hanging out with older people and, you know, experimenting with stuff that older people were doing, right? Not getting involved with family activities. And I noticed some of them, at the time I don't think I realized it, but I noticed some of them also didn't have fathers or had things that they seemed that they were not trying to deal with or didn't like. There's some things in life that why they weren't at home as well.
Mm. Something catching my attention. Are you an introvert or an extrovert, you would say, by nature?
So I think when I was coming up in my teenage years, I would say extrovert.
You're still an extrovert?
Yes,
okay, that's good. Because I noticed that would make some people shut down, but for you to still be outgoing, that's a good thing.
Right. So when I was coming up as a teenager, you know, like I said, I would feel like I was abandoned, or why my dad didn't want us, or why he didn't love us. So that kind of made me feel like I need to do other things for attention, right? So I didn't really start getting in a lot of trouble at a young age, but I was out in the streets and started using drugs and drinking at a young age. I think the first time I smoked marijuana was when I was like 7 years old. My babysitter smoked marijuana with me. I don't know if I really got high, but I was always, you know, sneaking my mother's alcohol. Not really to get, I don't think it was to get a sensation. I just seen other people doing it. And it was shortly after that, you know, I was using drugs and alcohol on a weekly basis. Yeah.
Yeah. You say 7 years old?
7 years old.
Marijuana?
Yes, sir.
And then by the time you were, 14, 15, you were doing what?
Yeah, by the time I was 14, I was using marijuana almost on a daily basis. I was experimenting, 14, 15 years old, I was experimenting with cocaine and LSD. When I was in junior high school. I was actually selling drugs when I was in junior high school.
Okay, you're selling drugs. You're in junior high school. Are you paying attention to what's going on in school? I mean, your grade. What are your grades like?
I started my grades started to go down. I mean, I got through school and I dropped out. But my mom made me go back. You know, I was always skipping school, using drugs and skipping school and going hang out with older people, going to concerts and all kinds of other things besides what I was supposed to be doing, which was learning and developing. Yeah, so I was always out in the streets. I didn't want to stay home. I was always under the influence of something.
So you would say these 10 years was around your high school years now when you say you was out in the streets?
Yes, sir.
Did you have any dreams then, no matter what? Do you think you had any dreams at that time or what you wanted to do or be?
I don't think they were positive dreams. At that point, I wanted to be a heavy metal drummer. And I wanted to party. I wanted to party all day.
That's positive.
I didn't want to work. I wanted to beat on my drums all day.
Yeah, I'm a drummer, so we relate that way.
Yes,
we relate that way.
Yes.
Sometimes maybe it's just things inside of us. We just have to beat it out. And the drum the best thing to beat it on.
Yes, sir.
So that was that a release for you? The music, playing the drums?
I think so. At the time, I thought it might have been, but it really and truly, I think it actually sucked me deeper into chaos and
because of that environment of that genre of music and
idolizing things that were not good for me.
Okay,
drinking and partying and womanizing and never having a care for nothing and being put on a pedestal, you know, really and truly being idolized.
What's the age now? What year are we talking about?
Right. So, 17 and 18, I finally I went to an alternative school after getting kicked out of normal high schools. And I finished high school. I went to an alternative high school. My mom made me finish school, right? So I went to alternative high school and I finally did graduate. And when my mom and my little brother, this was in Anchorage, Alaska, when my mom and my little brother moved back to Florida, I stayed in Alaska on my own just to graduate.
Hold on, I'm sorry.
Alaska.
Germany?
No, my mother was adopted in Germany and brought to the States.
Right.
I was born in Chattahoochee, Florida.
Okay.
And when I was 14, her third husband, we moved to Alaska, which was a great experience. But at the time, a 14-year-old kid.
What made y'all move to Alaska? He was military?
He was military.
Okay, I'm going to say.
And so for a 14-year-old kid that's been in Florida his whole life, going to Alaska was
a whole nother world.
Oh, I thought my life was over. When I got there, it was dark and all I could see was white. In fact, the first time I went to school, my hair froze to my head.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience. It was a great learning experience. I didn't know that till years later.
Just for our audience, the alternative high school.
Yes.
You dropped out of regular school.
I got kicked out.
Oh, you got kicked out.
For using drugs and being under the influence of alcohol.
Right. And so when you got kicked out, that's usually in the county, your whole county, you have to go to an alternative school now?
There was alternatives, right? There was different programs you could get into, right? And it just happened to be one called Save One High School, Specialized Academic Vocational Education. And it was really a great place because at that particular school, you had to either have a job or go to VOTEC school and your academic school.
Now, you're the first one I ever heard that said an alternative school was a great school. I went to an alternative school.
Well, the reason I say it was great is because it taught me, at the time, responsibility, right? I knew I had some things I had to do. And my mom and them were gone. So I had to drive myself to school. I went to a vocational school first thing in the morning. Then I went to my academic school. And then I had a job at night. And also some of the teachers and staff I met there poured into me. They constantly encouraged me, even though they knew I was going astray, right? Because I'm in an alternative school and I'm still, using every day. But they still showed me love and encouraged me to do the right thing. And I ended up graduating in 1988, and I received a scholarship and a top academic student of the year award. It was a great experience.
Alternative school, and you earn a scholarship.
Yes, sir.
That was a blessing in itself. Sometimes we just don't see it at that time. You know how hard that is to do coming from that part?
Right. And the cool thing was I was honored by it, and I didn't know how I would receive it or how it would come because I really wasn't thinking about what it was. I wasn't really thinking about it being something to use for furthering my education. I was just glad I was done with school, right? And they sent me the check, which was not a good thing because I used it to buy drugs. And at that point, start selling cocaine.
So right now we're just at cocaine, weed, and drink.
Yes, sir.
And how old are you?
At that time, I'm around 18. That was before I moved back to Florida.
So there's really, I mean, and I don't want to include your mom in this. I want somebody else to maybe have a voice in this. Nobody's intervening and saying, "Hey, Johnny, stop! Johnny, stop!"
I was pretty sneaky about it. Not too many people knew I was doing it, right? Only the people I was hanging out with. I covered it up well. I mean, my mom found marijuana in my room the first time when I was like in 7th grade, right? She found marijuana in my room and she got on me pretty good. But after that, the years, nobody really knew. And I really didn't think drug use was a problem until it became a problem. And that was really in my early 20s.
We're looking at, you don't believe that this is the issue. You don't believe this is a problem.
Not at all.
You come from a line of alcoholics. And so for somebody even to say something, you probably would reject it anyway.
Yeah, there was nothing no one could really tell me. And the crazy thing is that I didn't know it at the time, but the issues with my dad, right? Because I mean, the memories I have of my real dad none of them are good. Like being kicked in the privates at age 3, protecting my mom. I didn't even know at age 3 that I was supposed to protect my mom. It just instinct happened, right? So those things, I think, fueled me to keep going out in the street as I got deeper in addiction. And the things that really got a hold of me, and when I knew things were going to started getting really bad, was when I started using methamphetamine.
Do you know what methamphetamine is?
I definitely know what meth is.
Johnny, explain to us a little bit more about.
In the first couple of years, like I said, my early 20s of experimenting with meth was making me feel invincible. And then as the years continued, I continued in use. I was still working. I still had a job. And in fact, I started my own business, my own construction business during this. And I noticed that it was affecting my relationships, right? And not just with my girlfriend or my fiance, but my mother and my brother. I would alienate myself, right? And I would say mean things because I'd be in these rages. And I didn't know at the time that it was the guilt and the shame for I felt like I was a loser. But the drug takes that away from you. It was only like the after effects of coming down and going to work, and I'd start feeling like I was really, really a loser. And going through those the relationships with my girlfriend and stuff, I remember saying to myself, I'm turning into the one I hate the most. I'm turning into my dad. And that made me even more angry. And I'd go further and further, into heroin and pharmaceutical pills.
You just adding more and more drugs to it. Now we're at heroin?
Well, I think it's important that you know all of it, right? So I remember going to concerts, under the influence of 7 different chemicals. And not falling down or not having a bad time. It was just another day in the life.
Social tolerance. You said something a moment ago that caught my attention. You said you saw yourself becoming like your dad, right? And it brought to my mind and you didn't like everything that your dad did.
Absolutely nothing he did.
Right. And it reminds me of when they say we become what we despise.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's a saying in life, we become what we despise. The things we hate the most, after a while, without us knowing it, we be mimicking that. The very thing we hate, we become.
Right, and that's what brought to my attention. I remember having real heated anger arguments with my girlfriend, right, my fiance, and being just really, really mean.
Right.
And it was in that, under the influence of drugs, and I see myself, I'm like, wow, doing the same thing.
Did you have any times, in the time when you had your substance use challenges, were there any time when you were sober at them moments where you could know, I felt this way when I was not getting high, but when I get high? Could you see that at that time, or you just stayed?
I didn't really want,
never wanted to come down?
Right, there would be times I'd be sober and I would be at work or whatever, but I never really felt like this is what I wanted to do. I felt, because it made me feel more and more puffed up, prideful. Like nobody could tell me nothing. I could do whatever I wanted to do. And especially when the years kept going and I would be selling meth, and there's certain feelings of VIP treatment. Everywhere you go, people get respect because you're carrying on this facade, this image, this reputation you have to live up to.
At what point did the drugs become problematic for you in your life?
Right. So in my mid-20s, it started really affecting all my relationships. I mean, my family, my little brother. I remember him telling me, I was trying to make things right with him, and he told me, I said, if there's anything that I've ever done to you, I want you to forgive me for it and stuff. And he told me over time when we were kids, and I choked him, and he actually thought he was going to die, right? And that really affected me. So in the middle of my 20s, I started getting arrested. And it really started by getting pulled over by the police. And I had suspended license. So I was having all these tickets and encounters with the police, right? And really and truly, I started noticing it being a problem when I quit my job and I let my business go to waste. I'm selling drugs, and I don't go to work, and relationships are horrible. The one girl that I thought I was supposed to marry, the one that asked to marry me, a fiance of 14 years, I'm just verbally abusing her all the time. So it really, through my mid 20s, the end of my 20s, and get to early 30s, when I didn't start really going to jail and prison until I was 30, 31.
Mentally, what was going on? I mean, most people become suicidal, depression, anxiety. Did you suffer from any of that?
Right. I suffered from, mainly it was the anger. I never felt suicidal, although there was times I thought I wanted to die. I was like, this is just horrible. I remember being up for a week at a time and have a pocket full of money and whatever car I wanted outside, and women laying around and drugs everywhere. And I remember thinking to myself, what now? What now? And just feeling awful. And as the years went by, it stopped being fun. Especially the meth. I tried heroin, and those things weren't really my thing, and ecstasy and all that stuff. But the meth really brought out the worst in me. And it really amplified everything in me that was bad. All the dysfunction that I brought with me, that I adopted from my dad, that thing I thought I hated the most, I was becoming.
Right. And I'm going to give a sidebar comment as we go on with you sharing your story. I just want to commend you for being clean and sober, because today drug treatments won't even treat for methadone, right? So for you to be clean and sober is big these days. And the reason they won't do it because they feel people just won't come off of it. So to have a person able to share their story right now is big.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And the methamphetamine epidemic is outrageous. I see it in my middle of my addiction, in my life being absorbed, and my whole life revolving around it. And I've seen so many people. There's no meth success stories. No meth success stories at all. And I could see people falling further and further and turning into the worst versions. But for me, I never really thought I was doing anything wrong. I was helping people with what they wanted. Even though I felt horrible about, as the years went on, I felt horrible. But I never really thought I was doing anything wrong. That my crimes, it wasn't even a crime, because it was just another day in the life. Selling drugs didn't feel bad to me because that's what they wanted. I didn't go looking for them. They come looking for me.
Right. And you're still living in Chattahoochee at this particular time, right?
No, I was just born in Chattahoochee. I was raised in Panama City, and by way of Anchorage, Alaska, and now back to Panama City.
Back to Panama City.
Which ended up being the spot that I got in the most trouble.
Bay County.
My hometown, Bay County.
Bay County. You said that you started really running into trouble with the law around your 30s. Did I hear that?
I had run in with the law through my teenage years with the military police. I would have run-ins with them, and I would have in my early 20s run-ins with.
Your first experience with law enforcement that led to, I believe, your first arrest?
So my first experience with law enforcement wasn't necessarily arrested. I got in trouble, and it was by military police, and my stepdad got in trouble. And as I got in the 20s, I got arrested a couple of times for driving infractions and stuff like that. Maybe a small possession or something. But really in my early 30s is when I really started getting in trouble, when my life revolved around methamphetamine. I was selling lots of it, and I didn't really don't care about anything else.
Did that arrest end up in a conviction?
Yeah, I was convicted in my early 20s for my first meth charge in 1995, maybe with meth coming from California. It was in my mailbox. The Federal Express people delivered it, and the cops actually intercepted it and dressed up like Federal Express people and delivered it to my house. I wasn't there. My fiance was there, and it scarred her because the cops came in busting the place up looking for this package they delivered, And yeah, so they destroyed the house, and that was the beginning of a long road of incarceration.
Did that result in a prison sentence?
Yeah, so I violated probation multiple times, and that was my first my first prison sentence. I really wasn't no big deal for me. It was a couple years. I came out, hit the ground running, and got right back in the swing of things. I'm thinking I could do sell drugs better. And 5 months later, I was right back in jail and got sentenced to 70 months for trafficking meth.
At that point in your life, you went to prison, you came out, was out 5 months, then you got sentenced to 70 months. Where were you at spiritually in your life, or mentally or emotionally at that time?
Right, good question. So I had people in my life. I wasn't raised in a godly home. I had people in my life that I knew God put there, and they were telling me, they were showing me the love of God, and they told me some stuff about God. And I think during my whole life, I believed in God, but I never gave him no thought. I never gave him no thought. I never gave him no time. I never really worried about it.
You just wasn't there spiritually at that time.
Not at all. I was all about me. I was all prideful, and really and truly, I was, like Van Halen says, running with the devil.
After the 70-month stint, how long were you out then?
Right. I had that five-year sentence gave me a little different perspective, but I was still, while I was in prison, I was still using marijuana and still selling drugs in prison. When I got out, I was out for like a year and 11 months. I got my first real, a good job. I was doing okay, and and I was sober for a little while for the most part. I started dating a young lady, and we drank and smoked and stuff, and I wasn't on the hard drugs, right? And one day she said, "I want to try meth." I was like, "No, you don't." She's like, "Yeah, I do. I've never tried it." I was like, "You really don't know who you're sitting beside. It's not like I can just try meth. I'll get crazy. It'll end bad." And sure enough, a couple months later, I was right back in jail again.
Wow. So you had a good job at the time, and you were clean. You wasn't dealing with meth.
I wasn't selling drugs either.
And then the woman influenced you.
Yes, sir.
Right.
And I thought I could control it. Really deep down, I knew I couldn't. But that facade, that the drug tells you got this. You can do this. So they would, start thinking you're a functioning addict again, everything's okay, until it spirals out of control again, landing me right back to prison again.
Right. How much time did you do on that stint?
That was a year and a half. And I was when I went to work release in Jacksonville, I started thinking about, wow, this is a way bigger city. I could bring a lot more meth over here and make a lot more money.
Still
thinking I could do it better. The devil was still pimping me to thinking that you got this, man. Bigger and better. And so when I got released from the work release, I had a friend pick me up that I used to partner with, that we would traffic drugs together. I was high on meth before we got to the stop sign, and I sold meth again before I registered as a convicted felon. And 100 days later,
gone again.
I had 16 state charges and a federal indictment.
And by then, that's how many times you had been to prison at that point?
At that point, I'd been to prison 3 times.
3 times.
And when I was arrested again after the 100 days in 2014, that was my 4th commitment.
4th commitment.
Yes, sir.
Let me say something really quick, because the seriousness of meth, right? The seriousness of it. I've only seen the after effects of it, like where somebody has gotten off of it.
Right.
And I visited Panama City before, and you would not know what kind of hold a drug like that has on a small community, how it destroys. I mean, I look at it and I say, man, this wiped this place out. Now you're talking about your high school friends, you're talking about your neighbors. And then, you're talking about your family members. That's that drug. And so America, we say meth, but then we don't really count the cost for all the dead bodies, and that this drug is actually has actually caused in our communities.
That's a very good point, man. It really attacks every part of the life and a community, right? Because I never really thought about the ripple effect, and I just thought I was doing what I had to do to make it, right? But it's everybody that's connected to you suffers, right? I have friends and family and especially the people that you indulge with, right? Because you don't know how it affects their kids, and at the time when you're in your addiction, you don't really care. And lots of times the meth will lead to other things like a scoop and heroin and pills. I know people I've done both at the same time. Because you never feel. There's always this emptiness you're trying to fill with drugs.
And you said you knew that the feds was looking for you, or they was looking for somebody.
Yes.
Right? So you knew that you were kind of under the fire too at this time.
Yes, sir, because I had a friend of mine had went out of town. A couple girls I knew, they went out of town, and she had an app on her phone. Her boyfriend didn't trust her, and he put an app on her phone. And the app would activate and record. So when they got in trouble, he said, I got to talk to you about something. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, listen to this. And it was the police questioning her about her involvement in and they got pulled over in the crime, right? They got caught with a pound of meth in Atlanta, and they went to jail, and the phone started recording. He activated the app. I thought at first, when I first heard it, I thought he was the police. I was like, wow. He's like, no, man. Just they're in trouble. And I heard him say my name. Johnnie Jeter introduced us, blah, blah, blah. I was like, uh-oh. So yeah, the rest of the app played until it recorded until the phone died. So I heard the federal marshals saying, or the federal agents, the DEA agents saying they were coming to Panama City to get so-and-so people. They brought the girl, they brought the drugs, and they were coming to get a few people, and I was one of them. So I knew it coming. I warned the people, and I got out of Dodge.
And this kind of segues into the fifth conviction.
Right. Like I said, this is during the 100 days I was out in 2000.
So was it a federal case now, or was it still a state case?
It was still a state case, but the feds were coming because they had a case out, and they were trying to get as many people as they could. In an indictment, they try to get as many people as they can, because when the more people you have in that indictment, the more people will.
It's organized crime.
Right.
Yeah.
The more convictions they can get, and more people that will tell.
Will flip. Yeah.
Because the feds don't lose very much. They have a 98% conviction rate.
Are we now saying that I need to do something different?
Or are you saying I need to go to a bigger city and sell more? Give it to us.
At that point, when I got arrested in 2014, that was really when I had come to the end of Johnnie Jeter. Even though I didn't give God no recognition, I remember saying, oh, God.
Time.
And I remember being in the county jail, and God would still put people in my life to tell me about him and show me about him. And I was still in the county jail. I was smoking weed one day, and this was like December of 2014. And I remember people making a big spectacle about it, and I was disgruntled about it. And my roommate said, Johnnie, didn't you tell me they're trying to give you 135 years? Because my points, I scored out to 135 years for drugs. And I said, yes. He said, what are you doing? And right then I thought, I didn't have an answer. I always got a quick response for everybody, right? I didn't have an answer. And I remember being, I'm under the influence of marijuana, and I thought, what am I doing?
This is the Death of Prison podcast, brought to you by Lean On Me USA. You've heard the story of Johnnie Jeter and how he wants to know what's next. Join us in our second half. This is Death of Prison podcast. Around here we say, choose life.
We can change the world.